Great. Okay. And then Lauren, what grade are you?
I'm gonna be a senior in high school.
Okay. All right, Mr. Walker, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. The other young ladies will list that, and so we'll be
Alrighty.
probably the next minute or so.
Just a second here.
Are you gonna record?
Yeah, I gotta get you up. You're not going out to the world yet.
Uh-oh.
One more to admit.
I
There
want
we
the
go.
world.
Okay. Just admitted last, so there should be 5 people on there.
Yes.
Let's see. Okay, we'll turn off my video. There we go. And you are just a second. Ready to go out to the world. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now it's time for a Digi Sis in a digital world with your host, Ina Montgomery, right here on KUAW Radio, broadcasting on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, and Twitter. All right, and here's our show host, Ina
Thank you,
Montgomery.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Hope everybody's doing good today. I'm excited about this show. My name is Ina Montgomery, and the show is Digi Sis in a Digi World. And I started off, and I probably will return to doing all things digital regarding K through 12 education. But just with the happenings going on, I somewhat of a detour. So I've been covering topics related to current events. So the George Floyd murder kicked off a lot of different discussion and also raised issues. And one of those issues we'll talk about today, and the issue of the lack of Black history being taught in K through 12 education. So I'm excited today. Today is the eve of the Teaching Black History Conference that will be online. It'll be virtual, of course, because of COVID. And we pretty much have doubled the attendance. Last year was the second year. Tomorrow is the third year. And I believe there's about 700 plus registrants. And so that's pretty exciting for us to have that many people interested. But again, I believe the George Walker, in addition to, George Floyd, kicked off the awareness and the need that Black history needs to be taught in K-12 education. So I've had the opportunity already a couple of weeks ago, if you joined me, to talk to Dr. LeGarrette King. He is out of Columbia, Missouri, and he is the convener of the conference. And he's with the Carter G. Woodson Center at the University of Missouri in Columbia. And so he's got a team of people who are working to put together a successful conference and a lot of good workshops. And this year's theme, each year has a different theme. And this year's theme, we're focusing on the Black woman, and the conference is titled Her Stories. And so over the next 2 days, conference attendees will have an opportunity to hear the stories and the untold stories, most of them, of Black women. I'm excited about the presentation I'll be doing on the Black women of the Civil Rights Movement. A lot of Black women in the background who worked tirelessly, who never received any recognition. Not that they wanted it, but we should know who they are and how they worked towards the passing of the Voting Rights Act of 1964 and the Civil Rights Act of 1965. But there is a plethora of good presentations. Not sure how they're going to handle it if you didn't get a chance to register because they did cut off registration. But so stay tuned. I will let you know next Thursday if I have information what you can do to still access conference information. So today I am joined in the spirit of the conference. I am joined by three young women who are still in high school, and we're going to talk about the impact of Black history either being taught or not being taught in school. And they're going to talk to you about their experiences. I understand um, two, if not all, the ladies have participated in some of the recent protests. So I'm looking forward to hearing their stories and finding out more about them myself. So let's start. And so I'm going to go with the first letter of the alphabet, which is A. So Alyssa, we're going to start with you. If you could give us just a brief introduction about yourself and some of the involvement you've had with some of the protests, that would be great.
Hello, my name is Alyssa. I'm 15 and I'm from Wisconsin, and I'm the president of the Black Young Leaders Group in my school. And I have attended protests in November of this previous school year. I plan to walk out because of a blackface situation that happened at my school. And I helped lead that, and I've been to some of the Black Lives Matter protests in Wisconsin.
Okay, thank you. And if you could adjust your computer, we're getting like half of your face. There you go. Thank you. Thank you. All right, going to move on to you, Lauren.
Hi, my name is Lauren Donovan. I live in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm a senior in high school now. I'm 17. I've been an activist since I was probably in 6th grade. And I go to a predominantly white school, so that's definitely been a struggle for me. But recently, I've organized 3 protests since the murder of George Floyd and attended a lot since then. And when I was in middle school and high school, like the beginning of high school and stuff, I held walkouts and everything for a couple racist incidents that have happened at my school. So activism is definitely a big part of my life. I'm the president of a couple clubs at my school, and I'm the president for the St. Louis chapter of Jack and Jill this year. So that's exciting, but I'm definitely ready to have more activist work come at me.
Okay, thank you. And Trinity, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Trinity. I'm 15. I'm also from Wisconsin. I just started this activism stuff. I have a podcast with one of my deans. I participated in a couple of the protests from the George Floyd murder, and I also participated in the walkout that Alyssa was talking about. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Sounds like you and Alyssa are co-conspirators. So I'm just curious, for the age that you guys are, what was there anything that inspired you or motivated you at such an early age to get involved with activism? Anybody can just jump in.
I can go first. I started literally, like, I would say I actually started right when all the schools were shut down from the COVID situation. Mm-hmm. That's when the Ahmaud Arbery situation came out, mm-hmm. and I talked about that to the dean, Mr. Aggs, and that's how we started the whole podcast. We started with that one situation, then we continued from that to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. So from that, I feel like as kids, we shouldn't really still be going through all this, especially as Black kids in a predominantly white community. And that's pretty much why I started.
Okay, so was it like just watching TV and getting mad or angry and just wanting to do something about what was going on?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, thank you. Who's up next?
I'll go next. So when I was in 6th grade, when I was in middle school, Michael Brown was murdered by one of the officers in Ferguson. So that was a really huge thing, the uprising of Ferguson. And since I do live in Ladue, which is still in St. Louis, but it's a predominantly white community, a lot of my white peers either I guess, showed criticism towards Michael Brown, or, you know, had negative things to say about him with the, oh, well, if he didn't do this, well, maybe if he wasn't doing this, if he didn't rob the store, et cetera, you know, this wouldn't have happened to him. So hearing a lot of that from my classmates really wanted me to stand up and give my perspective as a Black student. And ever since then, I've been giving a lot of speeches. I've spoken to slews college Democrats. I've spoken at the 2017 and 2018 Women's marches. So I definitely think growing up in a predominantly white area has influenced my activism and everything that I do today, especially with seeing the resentment from my white peers. It's definitely just kind of given me something else to fight for. Just because, you know, I guess ever since the murder of George Floyd, I feel like a lot more of my white peers have become accepting of the Black Lives Matter movement and a lot of other things that I do talk about. But I remember before then, you know, saying Black Lives Matter was such a stigmatized phrase. It was something that, you know, I guess your point would get refuted so fast before they even heard your side of the argument or, you know, the backstory. The fact that Black Lives Matter is a controversial statement was something that really drove me to kind of make a change in my own community. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. And Alyssa?
What made me start was back in November with this blackface situation that happened at my school. A lot of people are like just getting past it and like we're acting like it was like not a big deal, and that like really bothered me. And I just feel like if we didn't do something about it, no one would learn from it, and I feel like it would happen again and that it would repeat itself. And there was like also a lot of racial issues in my school district, and it just brought all of that to light. So I planned the walkout, and that we didn't just talk about like the blackface incident. It talked about like everything because there's a lot of racial issues because I go to a predominantly white school district, and
Okay.
that just like brought everything together.
Mm-hmm. And the blackface incident, was that as a part of an event or just something somebody did?
It happened at a basketball game.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't like, well, not saying it would ever be appropriate, but it wasn't like it was a costume party or anything. He just came
Yeah, it
to the
wasn't a
basketball
costume
game.
party.
Yeah. Wow.
And a lot of people were there and they saw what happened. But what caught people's attention, it was posted on social media, and that's how I found out about it.
Oh, so you weren't actually at the game?
No, I was at the game. It was posted everywhere, and people spread it on like Snapchat and posts like that.
Mm-hmm. And did anything happen to the young man that did that?
I think he was suspended, and then there was me. I talked to him and another like people that helped me with the walkout. We had a conversation with him, and we had like a talk with him, and he was suspended for like a week, I think. And the kid who posted the picture was suspended too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of an accessory to the crime as well, posting something like that. So, preparing for tomorrow's conference, I'm not sure who's attending, who's not attending, but so teaching Black history. Tell me about, are there any, is it being taught in your school or not? Is like one teacher trying to do something? Tell me about your experiences with that and your educational journey on Black history being taught at your school. You can go ahead, Lauren.
So I've always found that we really don't talk about the history of people of color or Black people, especially in Ladue. Since we do lack a lot of Black staff and Black teachers and everything, I didn't really expect anybody else to put their input on Black history. But at my high school, we do have a Black Studies course, which you get to take it in 11th grade. I think they changed it so 10th graders, so sophomores and up can take it also. But last year, my 11th grade year of high school, was the first time that I got to take that class, and it was so informative, and there were so many good things that, you know, I got to learn from that class. It was taught by a white woman, so I always wish that I could get a Black teacher for that class. But for the English part of that class, we did get a Black teacher, so that's good. But I just always noticed that with the whitewashing of history, it was always, you know, I saw myself in the curriculum as the slave or somebody, you know, below white people, or, you know, the inferior, you know, part of the lesson. While my classmates always saw themselves as like the great discoverer or the hero or, you know, the topic of the whole lesson for about a month. So that's always been such a big issue to me, because we learn about the history of St. Louis, and if you've ever been to St. Louis or lived there, you know that it's a very segregated city. It's very black and white in St. Louis, and I feel like nobody really knows why, because it was never taught. We don't learn about the East St. Louis race riots. We don't learn about Medgar Evers. We don't learn about anything, but whitewashed history. We even learn that, George Washington's teeth were, wooden when they were really his slaves' teeth. Or the fact that, I don't know, we think Abraham Lincoln was this great abolitionist who loved black people, and that's not the case at all. Like, he didn't even like black people. So just the fact that we were taught so many lies. I spoke to all of my teachers a couple weeks ago, and just, I guess, expressed my concern for that, and how growing up, not even seeing myself in the curriculum had such a huge impact on me as a child, as one of the only black children in the school. So I haven't really gotten the chance to learn my history, except for last year. That was the first time that I did. But I've definitely been trying to, talk with the administrative board and everything to get stuff changed, so people who look like me can, see themselves in the curriculum and not get the sense of, oh, well, my people didn't even do anything for this country, or didn't have really a place in this world unless it was an inferior, they were the slaves or whatever, because that's really what we're taught in regular history. So that's definitely what I want to get put in there. But yeah.
Okay. And I'm just curious, do you go to a public or private school?
I go to a public school.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Trinity, Alyssa?
I can go. I'm sorry, what was the question?
The teaching of, I know, it's been the teaching of Black history in your school, is it taught or not?
Well, this year, we didn't really get to learn anything. It actually came down to the point where I would boycott the class. Like, I would not go until she taught something Black history. And
Are you referring to your social studies class?
Yeah, it was world history.
Okay.
And the teacher, she still didn't like really teach anything about Black history. It went from, how about you go to this classroom and you write down about what you want to learn. I wrote down about Emmett Till, how Abraham Lincoln wasn't how they made him seem. I have been told that, like, when it comes to like conversations about like the whole slavery thing, how Abraham Lincoln stopped that, I have told them, like, I was told once that Abraham Lincoln actually owned slaves himself, and everybody was like, no, Trinity, that's not right, and it really ended up being a whole argument about it. And then even after I prove all my points to it, they still be like, no, that's not right. Or I have been here in Sun Prairie for 7-8 years. I moved here from Appleton, and when I moved here, that's where it was more Black kids. And the only time I have legitimately ever learned anything about Black history was in elementary school, where the assistant principal started the Read Your Heart Out thing, where Black people in the community would come and read books about Black history. And that's how I learned most of my Black history, was them, like, through them 3 years of of me being in that school. Other than that, like, when I lived in Appleton here, I was literally the only Black kid in the entire school. And I couldn't tell you one thing we learned about Black history there. And still now, we don't learn anything. It's more so, these are slaves, this is what happened, this is happening now. Yeah. I would more so like it to be, you guys are now making Black history, you guys are history in the making, let's learn about y'all and what you guys want to learn about.
Right. And definitely the one big point you raise is that it takes the leadership. It takes the leadership to understand that the history needs to be taught, all of the history, and not just his story, as a lot of people say. And I can sympathize with you, or not sympathize, but I relate to. I'm sorry, you say George Washington or Abraham Lincoln? Abraham. Okay. Because I got my master's at University of Virginia. Well, that's Thomas Jefferson's school, and he was a slave owner, and then he writes in the Constitution all this, stuff about freedom. So a lot of hypocrisy there as well, from one of the founding fathers. and not to even mention Sally Hemings and his whole descendants of children with one of his slave women. So yeah, and that's over and over in history or his story that is taught, and that some people know and some people don't know. All right, Alyssa, you're up next.
I think it was like a 50-50 thing. I was in a different house than Trinity, and they did a project that they assigned for every student to do in my house where you had to write about a Black person that helped influence the culture or like had an important value in it. And you couldn't write about Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, or like MLK. You had to write about someone that people didn't know about. And that was like assigned for all the students to do. So for me, my teachers did do something, but I heard a lot of other teachers didn't. So it was like a 50-50 thing in my school. And I'm originally from Madison, so I grew up in Madison School District, and that is where I've learned most of Black history because it's very diverse there, and you see everyone. And then, but for the past 3 years, I've been going to some Prairie School Districts, which was like a big change for me because that's a predominantly white school, and I'm from somewhere that is very diverse and that you see everybody.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like between the three of you, you guys have really been instrumental in having a leadership role in with the protests, with the sit-ins, and how are you easily able to get your peers engaged, or do you have to convince them? How do they respond to your efforts and your passion for what you're doing?
For me, with the Black Young Leaders group, we had to kind of like convince some students because a lot of the Black kids that go to my school were scared to speak up and spread their voices, and they didn't feel comfortable with talking about their experiences there or sharing it. So I think when we all came together and they had people to look at to talk for them, that helped them feel more comfortable, and then they slowly ease their way into spreading their own voices and their own experiences.
For me personally, I actually didn't join like none of the Black leadership groups at school at all because I was one of the people that was like afraid to speak up. But like with it being now and we're not allowed to be in school or like do everything, we all use social media, so like Snapchat, Instagram. That's how we get the word out. There's like I wouldn't say like big parades or anything, but like the protests here, we did one in Sun Prairie, like a small one for just the kids. It was all student led to no adult. There was one adult, and that was Mr. Rags, that helped everybody do it. Like everything mostly here is student led, and we all use like social media and stuff. So that's how we get the word out.
Okay, but the question leaned more towards, do you have to convince them to participate, or are they interested?
I mean, personally for me, I not throwing shade, but like the white kids, we have to convince them. But it's also then like we also gotta tell them the actual reason why. Because me personally, I think that a lot of the white kids, they use us as a trend. Like they use all the protests as a trend. Like because I remember half the kids that went to protests here in Madison for the George Floyd, they didn't participate in a walkout. They didn't participate in nothing with Black history. They don't talk about nothing like that. And all of a sudden, this happened. There's protests. Oh, everybody's doing it. Let me do this too. So for the white kids, yes, we have to convince them that to do it for the right reason, and not do it for clout or whatever you want to say. But for the Black kids, it's always like, okay, let me figure this out and I'll do it.
Right. Okay. And Lauren?
So I've always been pretty outspoken. Like ever since middle school, I think people have really known me as like, oh, like she's about her business when it comes to activism. Like that, I think the resentment from a lot of my white peers definitely came from that. You know, if I show up to a party and I hear y'all saying the N-word, I'm calling y'all out. You know, I'll call you out on social media. I'll go to the administration. Don't say it again. Like, you know. So I feel like a lot of people already knew, like, I'm kind of about that stuff. But I think when it came to convincing with my other Black peers, I understand, especially the Black kids that hang out in, like, white crowds and stuff. Like, I never mean to call anybody out, but like, I definitely understand where they're coming from when, you know, you don't want to speak up, where you're afraid to speak up because you might get in a predominantly white space, you might get outed, you might get, you know, see resentment from your friend group where they're like, oh, like, well, I don't really want to mess with you anymore. Like, you always talk about race, you know, with whatever they have to say about that. So I definitely understand that. Specifically with like the Black male athletes, like that's definitely where I see it. You know, and Black safe spaces, they'll, Lauren, like, I love what you said. You know, they'll tell me how they feel, but then as soon as we come around, like, you know, our white friends and everything, and something like that comes up, they're dead silent. So I think it's hard convincing people to speak up about stuff if it makes them uncomfortable, especially when they are Black, because I wouldn't want anybody Black to face the resentment that like I've faced or anybody else who's an activist has faced from, you know, their friends and stuff. I definitely understand that. But at the same time, like, I really want Black people to respect themselves and be able to be around people who can respect them for, you know, their actions and their race. But as far as the white kids, I've definitely seen a lot of white kids, especially around this time, where, you know, being Black has always been a trend. I don't care what anybody says, you know, with cultural appropriation, ebonics, especially in white, predominantly white schools, being Black is definitely a trend for a lot of the white kids. But when it comes down to protesting and everything, I've seen so many people post their, you know, little Instagram captions. Oh, you know, their bikini pictures. Oh, and by the way, Breonna Taylor's killers aren't locked up. You know, they're posting a protest. The first protest that I hosted, everybody in Ladue, which is the predominantly white neighborhood that I live in, everybody popped out. Everybody came. And then the next protest I held, there were a lot less people. And then the next one, there were probably like 20 people.
Wow.
So it's always really good, but the further you get into the movement, the further you see how many people really did care. Because a lot of my white classmates were like, oh, like, that's enough activism for me today. And, you know, I wanted to take a break so bad, but I've been doing this for what, like 3 months straight now? Not really with taking a break or anything. So I definitely think convincing people to stay on board is something that's hard. But at the same time, like, I do get on my Snapchat story and I do directly call people out. And I think at this point it's because, like, people know my reputation. I don't really have anything else to lose. Like, I've called out teachers by their names. You know, I don't really, not that I shouldn't care, but at this point I'm kind of just, hey, like, this is something that's really important to me. If you guys don't like it, don't be a part of it. And if you would like to be a part of it, be genuine about it. That's all I ask, you know?
Yeah.
If you want to be down with the movement, if you want to be here for your Black friends, be here for us at all times, not just, you know, half the time.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting that they consider it trendy. And
Yeah.
we know that we're Black 365, not, you know, we don't turn it off and turn it on. It's our daily reality, which is a beautiful reality. I'm not saying that it's bad.
Yeah.
But going back to you, Lauren, so let's talk about your parental support. So what you guys think about that. How do your parents support you? Are they concerned for you? And I would say, I hate to say, especially you, Lauren, but with you being so outspoken and calling teachers out, what kind of comments or feedback do you get from your parents for your activism?
My parents are definitely really supportive. Ever since it was the first time I ever really publicly spoke was the 2017 Women's March. And I think I just turned 13 or 14. I think I just turned 14. Yeah. But I just turned 14. You know, I'm young. I'm speaking in front of, I think it was like 25,000 people that were at that Women's March. So they were definitely concerned. But like, as I, you know, started to grow and as they like kind of understood that, like, I don't really like, I don't even mean to sound like I'm bragging or anything, but like, I don't really get nervous in front of big crowds anymore when it comes down to speaking. Cause like, this is something that I really love to do. Like, I'm really passionate about this. And I think that they see it and they're fully behind it. I think definitely when it comes down to protests and like having my name out there, they worry and stuff. But like, I'm almost 18. So it's kind of like at this point, who's going to stop me? Yeah. I kind of think that's it. But they're definitely down behind me 100%.
Okay. Alyssa, your support?
My family's been really supportive about it. They don't really get concerned about it, to be honest, because they just know that I'll be able to handle the situation. But they've been really supportive the whole time.
Okay, that's good. And Trinity, is she there? I think she might have taken a break. So,
no, I'm here. Sorry, my bad.
Okay. Yeah, asking about your parental support and your efforts and what you do.
My mom's actually really proud of me. She supports everything because if this was like if we were still in school and all this stuff was happening, I know for sure I probably wouldn't be speaking up like I am now if I didn't. See, me know I am around like a lot of white people too, so I probably wouldn't speak up like I am now. So my mom is extremely proud of me. She supports everything. She was not going for like the big protests in Madison, so like the small protests in some parade, she was like go for it, I don't care, just stay safe,
Right.
don't do nothing stupid. And I was like, I got you. And she's super supportive of it.
Okay, well, great. All right, we got just a couple of minutes here left on this show. I really appreciate you all coming on, but I want to just go around. You got like maybe 30 seconds each. Give me your final thoughts in regards to Black history being taught in schools. Like you got like maybe 30 seconds. Go ahead, Trinity, since you're still on. Is she here? She froze up. Alyssa, go ahead.
I think it definitely could be taught a lot better. I don't think the history book is definitely written in the white perspective, and I think we should definitely talk about other people than just MLK, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., or slavery. And we should talk about people that had more influence. And I think Black kids need to know more people that helped themselves, and I think it should just be taught completely differently.
Okay, thank you. Final words, Trinity, since you're back now.
I don't know. I feel like right now too, we should learn about more like Black gay women, Black gay men. That has helped out a lot. I know that's one thing we don't ever talk about. Same thing with Alyssa. Like, we need to learn about everybody else besides Rosa Parks and all of them. Like, they had their time. I feel like now history should be talking about how we are making history now. So like the George Floyd murder, all of that.
Okay, thank you. And Lauren, real quick.
Yeah, I definitely think people should really understand the fact that Black history didn't just start at, in 1619 when we were brought over as slaves, and the fact that Black history isn't just slavery, and then it jumps to the civil rights movement. It's always been there, and we've always been here to contribute to every aspect of American history. We're just not seeing it, and we're not recognized, and we've gotten our credibility taken away. So that definitely is the root of a lot of issues that we have today.
Yeah,
just the fact that we don't learn.
Yeah. Well, I can definitely say in my closing remarks, as a 50-something-year-old woman, it's just interesting for the age that you guys are. We're still talking about the same thing that I talked about when I was in high school. I was also very active in activism, sit-ins, protests, all that stuff. I still, to this day, participate. But tomorrow, teaching Black History Conference. It will be virtual. Not sure yet how they're going to handle the recording and making that available to those who are not able to register and get in. So stay tuned. Again, I'll have those details for you next Thursday. And this is a great show. I want to thank my guests, Alyssa, Trinity, and Lauren, for coming out and sharing your time and your thoughts. And I appreciate you all for what you're doing. Continue to do what you're doing. You're doing a great job. And somebody's got to do the work. We already know that. And we know that one person does make a difference. And so you don't need to have a big crowd behind you. And sometimes people may be with you. They may not be there physically, but they may be there in spirit. And they may also do actions that you're unaware of, but that they were actually motivated by you. So signing off, Ina Montgomery, a Digi Sis in a Digi World. And I will see you guys next Thursday. Have a good day.